Let's kick off Pro Soccer Talk this week with our first big segment. And it's simply a question. Was this the best ever season from top to bottom in Premier League history? I mean, starting with Championship Sunday, the way that Man City won it, the way that Leeds stayed up, for how many different battles and momentum swings, that to me summed up just how great the season was and how much intrigue and how much just left to play for there was right on the final day. It just really ebbed and flowed throughout the season. Nick, what are your thoughts on this being one of the best, if not the best, Premier League seasons in history?
My thoughts are yes.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought.
Pregnant pause. And Andy and I, what I love about Andy is like we're very tuned into the fact that we may have recency bias, and yet I don't even think twice about it. I don't know how you look at it any other way, Joe. I'm looking up and down a table right now. It just happens to be on the screen in front of me. And the swings this season, what do we have? Half the teams fire their manager. Half of the time that worked out. Half of the time it didn't. We had guys, some of the craziest stories you can imagine. I just think I'm looking at the middle of the table, and I'm looking at Leicester, who were down in the bottom half for a while because they were contending with European ills, if you will. Newcastle lost, didn't win till their 14th game of the season. They finished 11th. Palace, I remember talking with Andy before the season. Do they have 11 players? Can they start a game right now? And they finished 12th under Vieira. The stories we saw with Brentford and Leeds, and for all of that stuff to happen, to see these teams outside or inside the top 17. And I didn't mention Man City or Liverpool. Think about that.
It's been crazy. So let's mention them, Andy. In terms of the title race going down to the final few minutes of the entire season, that was just for Man City to finish 1 point ahead of Liverpool. We said it all season long, but they are so far away from the other giant clubs in England. They are on their own. Liverpool were very close to perfection. Man City were slightly closer to perfection, and that's why they got over the line and won the title. But as we said, being at the Etihad, seeing that live, the emotions that conjured was 10 years on from the Aguero. I think Nick's been having this discussion. Is it as good a moment? Potentially, the way that they rallied to do that in terms of what they needed to do. And they've said, well, basically, come on, we're 2-0 down now. We need to stop messing around and put the ball in the back of the net. And it went from being like, they are going to blow this, and this is one of those games where they miss chance after chance and they're never going to score, to boom, boom, boom. Oh my God, they're in front. And it was ridiculous, a ridiculous moment and a ridiculous season. So for Championship Sunday specifically, when we're looking at a title race and across the league, do you think that's the best ever final day we've actually seen drama-wise up and down the league? Because 2012 is always going to take some beating, or I don't think we'll ever really get close to that in the Aguero moment. But this was really, really close. And I think over the entirety of the league, I don't think we're ever going to beat this. I hope we do.
No, that would. Well, I'm not sure I do actually. That would be very stressful. I think, to be covering it all 10 games at once. It was special. Obviously, it was very special. We had two very special teams locked in a special battle in a special season the entire way. Like basically from week one all the way until the very end, and to have the one final or two or three final swings, I guess, on the final day within that title race was very special. I think as a singular moment, Aguero scoring the goal, given the time in the game, given the fact that it was Manchester City's first title that they were winning, I think that probably wins out for the moment. But I think in terms of the sequence and just the overall event, when you take into account the title, you've got the top four that was on the line for about 20 minutes or so on Sunday. You had teams trying to jostle and jockey to get into the top half. Obviously, you had the relegation battle. There was so much up and down the table, and we've been saying it for the last couple of months when it became clear that every one of these races was going to go to the final day. And so the fact that they did, and that most of them, I guess all of them but the top four race, had a final day late swing, because you had Leeds doing what they did in stoppage time against Brentford. And so, I don't know how you could top this, aside from maybe having a third team where you've got three teams with three results, and somebody goes from third to first, somebody goes from first to third with one goal that's scored in one of the three games would maybe be the only way. And the computing that would be required to do that on the fly in my head, I'm not sure I could handle it, because with the two in the title race yesterday and the two in the relegation battle, there was a lot of score checking going on my computer. I can tell you that.
There was a lot. There was a lot. As I said, I was at the Etihad Stadium. It's brilliant, amazing scenes. And I just kept thinking back to sort of the last few seasons when there haven't been full stadiums. And part of me is thinking, is the reason this season's been so good? Is it the euphoria of fans being back in stadiums, players enjoying that, taking their game to a whole new level, and almost kind of a rebirth of the Premier League in some ways, of having the fans back? They play such a huge part of it. But as I said, I just allowed myself to have a moment after Gundogan scored the winner to go 3-2, just to look around and see the jubilation, the euphoria of these fans that 5 minutes previous thought they are going to lose the title and blow it on the final day. So the momentum swings, the mood swings from despair to just sheer joy was incredible to see. And we saw that play out across the league, not only on the final day, but throughout the season. But Nick, relegation battle, let's focus on that, because Leeds United, what they managed to do there to win on the final day at Brentford and relegate Burnley in the process. I mean, Jesse Marsch, what a job he's done. And that success is great for American soccer. And we talked about it a lot on the show, the perception of US players and US coaches. I mean, this will do wonders for that in Europe and in the Premier League in particular. So hats off to Jesse Marsch, because none of us saw that coming. When we did our pre-show prediction for the weekend, we all said that Leeds are sadly going to go down, but they pulled it off. I mean, how did they do it?
You know, listen, in a few years, we're going to talk about this with Man City and Liverpool. We've done it with Man United and Arsenal recently. How do you take over for a statue? And what I mean by that is someone who at your club is going to get or has a statue already. And to step in like Jesse Marsch did and just take a team and turn it over, it reminds you that no matter how bad or good things are at a club, there are people there who are willing to embrace something new because they want to win, because they want to get it done. And I think Leeds had a lot of talent. They were clearly underperforming. I don't want to even make it about yesterday because in a nutshell, it feels like the spirit was there. They were completely flipped, which isn't to say that, you know, Marcelo Bielsa or Jesse Marsch has a different take on football, but these guys had been drilled for so long that sometimes, the switch is flipped. If you give all 20 teams, including Burnley, the chance right now to start over with Sean Dyche or Mike Jackson, how many of them are choosing Mike Jackson, right? But it was what they needed at that time. And I thought it was crazy. I still feel like they did him dirty. And I want to see him succeed. But that's the thing. I'm amazed by what Jesse Marsch was able to do, taking over for a manager that Pep Guardiola calls one of his, idols.
Yeah, incredible, right? I mean, Andy, Jesse Marsch, the scenes there with Rafinha in the away end, the relief, I think, more than anything, given all their injuries throughout the season, Bamford, Calvin Phillips, so many defenders out. They had a lot of odds stacked against them, Leeds United. So I think now for Jesse Marsch, it's about building on this, and they could pretty easily see themselves in the top 10 next season, just like they had that great first season when they were promoted back to the Premier League. So this is good momentum, I feel like, for Jesse Marsch, and these players now have a lot of belief in him and his methods.
You said the word right there that I was going to get to. I don't want to oversimplify it, but I really do think that he arrived February 28th, took that job from Bielsa, and he got the players to buy in and believe. And I know with the Ted Lasso thing that's running in a parallel universe simultaneous to this Premier League season, that seems like a cop out, and the fact that he's the American coach in the Premier League and everything. But if you look at how they played tactically, it wasn't very different, because Bielsa and Marsch there are differences, but they are smaller, detailed differences. It's not an overarching difference in philosophy. They have a lot of the same ideas and they want to do a lot of the same things. And so there wasn't too much of a transition in that, which is good, because I don't think he was going to have enough time, obviously, in training to bed in a whole new system and everything. And he didn't have the benefit of a transfer window either. And so he wasn't able to bring in any new players. And so it really was about, hey, you are the players that I have now. I'm the manager that you have now. We can get on the same page. We can believe in one another. We can believe in this project and get over the line. And they just did it in the end. And so what you said, Joe, I think is the perfect point. I am excited to now see Jesse Marsch be backed in a way that Bob Bradley wasn't when he was at Swansea and never was going to be, given the size of the club. David Wagner, when he was at Huddersfield, when they were in the Premier League, wasn't backed. Size of the club, once again, Leeds is a big, big club with a lot of money. And now the fact that they know they're going to be in the Premier League next season, they are going to back Jesse Marsch in a way that an American coach has never, ever been backed before. And I'm very excited to see where that leads.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Leeds.
You did it.
Oh, you didn't believe in Leeds. Okay, so they're already bringing in Brendan Aronson as well. That deal is going to get done, we believe, for around $30 million. So a young American attacker coming in. I mean, I could see a bit of a US revolution there at Leeds United in terms of Tyler Adams, a few other players, and Jesse Marsch, I think, will lean heavily on that now. And he's gained that respect and the trust, I think, of the Leeds hierarchy to say, okay, who do you want to bring in? So that was fun. That was fun to see that unfold on the final day. Obviously, poor Burnley. They've been good in the Premier League the last 6 years that they've been in it, but it just felt like their time was up, especially when they sold Chris Wood mid-season. Obviously, Sean Dyche then going. They nearly saved themselves in the end, but you do worry about them now going down to the Championship. They're a very different club without Sean Dyche, and financially as well with the American takeover that they've had recently. It seems like a bit more unstable, let's just say that, in terms of where they're at with Tarkowski going, Ben Mee, Nick Pope, Dwight McNeil, these kind of players. Do they stick around? I don't think so. I think there'll be a lot of Premier League teams coming in to cherry pick the best players from Burnley. Have shown they can do it week in, week out over the last years. So there's always one team that loses out in these final day relegation battles, and that was Burnley. But they have added a lot of good moments to the Premier League over the last few years. Crazy scramble in kind of the mid-table and the European places, Nick, because we had Wolves dropping all the way down with their final day defeat. We had Brighton pushing up with their win against West Ham, and Leicester as well. They pushed right up to 8. The Seagulls are soaring. You love the Seagulls. And then West Ham obviously losing that game. They missed a massive chance because Man United just couldn't be bothered. They lost at home pretty much for the last month of the season, the last few months. Just could not be bothered. Lost at Crystal Palace, but somehow still finishing 6th in the Europa League group stage. So pretty wild there in that battle for Europa Conference League, which West Ham are in now, Europa League, and then that group of clubs underneath them are actually, I think, Leicester, Brighton, and then maybe Crystal Palace and maybe Wolves can really push for European qualification next season. So there's a lot going on in that part of the table as well.
Joe, I'm just thinking about this. We just talked about how this was the best season ever. And yet when I start to think about the teams that stayed up and the teams that went down, next year it's going to be insane. Because we've talked about this for a couple of years now with the amount of money that's in the league and how much you get for staying in the league. The teams that stay in, even the small ones, have money to invest. And even though Fulham's already lost one of their best young talent, we know they're going to spend. This isn't a small team coming up. Depending on what happens with the other groups that come up, the Cherries, right? They still have money. They still have their parachute payment. I think we are now at a point where it is so hard to come into this league and stay in it. And that's kind of why I mentioned a little earlier how forget Leeds, talk about Brentford at one point. All these teams have a chance to kick on and collect maybe, it's important to win games. You start to think about that, turn a couple draws into a couple wins, and how many of these teams end up saying they're a top half team going into next season? I mean, I hate saying this. We're talking about one of the best finishes and best seasons we've ever seen. And I'm thinking to myself, well, Newcastle's going to spend, and I bet Fulham's going to spend. And then, maybe Man United's going to be like, I'm already thinking like August. I mean, I want these 2 months to myself, by the way, but I'm already thinking about August.
Yeah, I will say, though, there is, and we have seen it, there's a risk of you come up, and Fulham is the perfect example, 2 years ago, or even, I think, 4 years ago as well, because they've yo-yoed for the last 5 years going up and down. They came in and spent a lot of money and wasted a lot of money. I'm thinking of the Jean-Michel Seri transfer window. That was an absolute disaster. I think Mitrovic was maybe brought back during that. You can come up and do it wrong if you just spend willy-nilly and you don't have a plan. And I think if you look at Brentford as the example that you made there, Nick, they came up with a plan. They've had a plan for years and years, projecting out 2-3 years into the future. If we are in this league, if we are in that league, if we are in another, having a plan is such an underrated part of running a football club, which is crazy to think about. Some of these are worth multiple billions of dollars. You think you would have a plan in place for those. And, to go back to Manchester United in that same conversation there, all of the money in the world, no plan, and look what you get.
That's very true. And I just hear a lot of managers when they come to the Premier League and maybe after their first season or their first 6 months, how they all across the board just talk about how difficult it is. And I'm always getting the feeling, and I'm not taking anything away from the Champions League, but I feel like the Premier League now is just getting so much harder to do well in, so much more difficult, so much more even across the board that it's that level. It's almost like watching the Champions League every weekend, or even better than that. Does that make sense? I mean, even the teams in the middle, if they were in the Champions League, a lot of those teams would probably get out the group stage or be very close to doing that. So I think the level is so high now in the Premier League. Before, it was kind of disputed about the Bundesliga, La Liga, what's the best league. I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever now that the Premier League is head and shoulders above the other big leagues in the world. I mean, there'll be some people out there who have a problem with me saying that, but I just don't think so. I think, as Nick said, with the investment, even the teams coming up, even Nottingham Forest, if they come up, they're a huge team. Not reigning, but previous European champions. And it's just incredible to see the size of clubs, the size of investment, and just how tight this season was through the middle part and even towards the bottom as well, the fight to stay in the Premier League. With Everton, we haven't even talked about them surviving. It just really sums up to me just how great the Premier League is. So, Nick, do you want to jump in? Because
I want to point out that the boss matters. Andy mentions the system, and I go back to Fulham, and that's not to say that they had bad managers back then. But, you mentioned that Sarri window. They also signed a guy who's gone on to star at some big teams in Anguissa, but he just wasn't used or used correctly. So you have to have that system, the implementation. It all has to be working together. Everyone talks about Liverpool's recruitment, rightfully so, because the pieces go into the pie. And Tsimikas, right? There's a great example. They buy him and you're like, well, listen, they've got fullbacks, and it takes them a year to get in. And Cancelo at Man City, when you have bosses, and look at the top 6 right now with Ten Hag going into it. When you have a Conte and a Tuchel and a Klopp and a Guardiola, good luck. Good luck beating those guys on a week-to-week basis.
Next season may be even better than this season. I'm now starting to convince myself listening to us talk. Okay. What is your main takeaway from this season when you think back to the 2021-22 Premier League season? Andy, what is the first thing you're going to think about or the fondest memory you're going to have?
It's incredible how much Nick and I can share a brain sometimes, because my big takeaway, and I was trying to figure out where to put this in this week, because I think it's a very important point that gets overlooked a lot. When you have a special manager, a special person in charge, I think you can become a special club. And I think we have seen clubs become that with Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp, Manchester City under Pep Guardiola. I know they were winning titles before him, but that was the money. This is something special now. This is an actual project that he has built into, what feels like a machine. We have seen it go the other way as well, though. We've seen Manchester United fall off after Sir Alex Ferguson. We've seen Arsenal fall off after Arsene Wenger. The special manager makes a special club. When you lose that special manager or you don't have one, you are just a normal club. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from this season is we have 2 very special teams at the top and the potential for maybe a couple more, because there are some very good managers in this league. I think there could be one more joining that group next season. I'll save that for a little bit later this week, because I think we're going to do some predictions for next season. But at that point, I will just put a pin in it, because when you have that special person at the top with the ideas and that connects to everybody and relates to everybody and gets everybody believing in them. And look at the way the Liverpool players embrace Jurgen Klopp after the game. Look at the way Pep embraces his players after. It's just different. It's just completely different to anything you see anywhere else. And I think that's such a big factor in how good and how dominant those 2 teams have been.
Nick, what about for you, mate?
Oh, man.
Easy question, right?
Yeah, I almost want you to rephrase it. I almost want to think about this in a different way. I guess what I'm going to remember is, because I want to shout this out. This is a dynasty, Manchester City. We don't like to talk about it because of the money that's been involved and how much investment they've made. And, even though that they are a longstanding club in English soccer, right, that they're still considered new to the party. But what they have done, the fact that even though as crazy as it was, that on day one of the season, I still feel like I rode with it. You guys know every year I've flip-flopped on where I am. And I just said, you know what? No, like Liverpool's really good. And but look at this team from Diaz to Rodri, the guys we don't talk about, De Bruyne, and him calling it, I think that stuck out to me yesterday. Him calling it the best of the four makes you realize how hard it was for them to outlast Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool might be the second best team of this century so far to a team in their league. Think about that.
Incredible. I mean, I think my main takeaway is just, I mentioned it earlier, but being lucky enough to go to games here and be in stadiums, the atmosphere, the soul of the Premier League has returned after, let's face it, it's been a grim few years, empty stadiums, and it just never quite felt the same. The play was still good on the pitch, but now it's back to the level, if not even better. Like we said, this is one of the best seasons, if not the best ever. And I feel like I've just tried to enjoy that every single game I've been lucky enough to go to, just to look around and see the smiles on people's faces, celebrations, the banter, the chants. And yeah, that's been my main takeaway, that really the soul has returned, and the connection with the fans and the players and the coaches seems to be even stronger than it already was. And again, yesterday, maybe again, this is recency bias, but that final 14 minutes at the Etihad, I don't think I'll ever forget that. The noise, the crackle of emotion, of pure ecstasy from those Man City fans when that third goal went in and they knew they were going to win the title after being so neck and neck with Liverpool all season long. That will take some beating. And Pep Guardiola said it best. He said these players will be legends and they'll always be remembered. And I think we'll be talking about this Man City team and the way they won it 50 years from now, probably. This will go down in the history books as one of the greatest teams that the Premier League and English soccer and world soccer has ever seen. So, gents, what a season. Incredible. Amazing work all season long to cover all 380 games. And you can head over to Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com for all the latest analysis and reaction to this great season. There's a post, as I said, with video highlights and all of our things that we learned from every single game. And it was a pleasure to work with you guys on it all season long, because that was so much fun. And as we said, one of the very best, if not the best seasons in Premier League history. So that will take some beating for sure.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches and much more.